Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of, yes, you got it, Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9.11, and of course we're playing as the Empire of Japan. Now I want to say a quick word about this again. I know I've mentioned some down in the comments of some of the stuff about particularly Germany coming across through these two provinces here in the Maginot Line. Now I'm not exactly sure what the fortification levels here are. Now this is the same version of Black Ice that I had just previously used to play my German campaign. All I have done is not selected all of the other German submods. So, it's just on that. I did, at the start of, or very close to the start of it, before any fighting broke out, I did reduce the Black Ice level of effectiveness of fortifications, which I think is way overdone. And it's done so heavily because I believe as a compensation for the bad AI to make Madrid hold out long time, you know, against nationalist assaults. And oh well, Moscow, they never defend, you know, leave good defensive units here, so whatever, just because it's normally where the, you know, army high command is, so whatever units that shatter and happen to make it back here will be here and they'll hold out better. You know, that's their that's their thinking. Now there were not just the which are turning a city into a battlefield, and not all cities are equal battlefields. You look at a lot of Western American cities, they're very spread out and they're built with lots of wood. Those make an entirely different city versus a city of stone and rubble that's turned into rubble that's fought in, and then Moscow with its sort of big churches and the Kremlin, which means fort or castle or whatever, would be a big obstacle in and of itself. So not all cities are equal battlefields to be fought in, just by their architecture and their terrain and other factors. But they did fortify Moscow and the approaches of Moscow. The Soviets did as the Germans were approaching. So having some level of fortification is absolutely appropriate. I am not disputing that in any way. But, and this is a criticism or critique of Black Ice, because they're compensating for bad AIs. And even the Hearts of Iron 4, I don't know if even, but Hearts of Iron 4 AI doesn't understand either strategic reserves, and it doesn't understand defending critical areas in the rear, even if all of the approaches are, you know, potentially defended as well. Just on the idea that, yes, at some point there's likely to be a breakthrough. So even if you know, you have all, you know, if you have a ring around Paris, here, the however many provinces touching Paris, that's what I like about this system better than, I guess this is just 6, but then hexes, in that you can, not all provinces, you know, have equal number of touching places. But, you know, so if you ring around Paris, you know, 2 divisions stacked up everywhere, but none in the center of Paris, at some point something's going to give. And it's better to have at least one fresh division here holding out, you know. So the AI doesn't understand this, because AI has Paradox is yet to find no, I was going to say a good AI programmer. That may not be the case, because I don't know that they're bad. They just have yet to find one that can do good combat AIs. Slitherine or Matrix, they're sort of functioning under both those names. I don't know if those are two. They're owned by the same people, to the best of my understanding. I don't know if those are just 2 fronts for the same office now, or if they're 2 different, you know, development houses, both owned by the same people, but my contact is the same for both of them. Yes, I do have contacts there now for in their public relations. They've been very good to me. Seem to have very good battle AIs, and I'm not sure why they're doing so well and Paradox is doing so bad. I have a feeling that Paradox is trying to be fancy and try to make better thinking AIs, where, and this is just a theory, but I don't know, where Slytherin is just doing basic AIs that get the job done, think in a reasonably functional manner. That's my guess, but I don't know. So I have in my setup for the last game, like I was saying, reduced the effectiveness of both forts and pillboxes, these two things, fortress and pillbox. But it is still more than vanilla. You know, vanilla, Hearts of Iron, their finest hour, but not as much as Black Ice. So it's somewhere in the middle. I forget exactly what it is I set it to. So, and if you remember, and you can go back and look at my playthrough where I did do some assaults on this fortification line here that weren't going so well. So I don't know what Germany had stacked up right around here. And I don't know if the French AI was moving something out of the way and left it open, or if they just left it way too undefended or something. I don't know. Or maybe they just really concentrated. But I'm just saying that this is a slightly modified over your game that you're playing, but not very much. With that note, let's continue watching the fall of France. And I'm sure you've noticed the last couple, and I don't know what I'll use this time. Thumbnails I've recycled from my previous game. Could have rebuilt them entirely, but I just simply decided, both for fun and whatnot, to slap the correct big red Japanese style number. Font style, I should say, number. Decline. Germany, we give them money for metal. No, decline. That's just too big. So, I may do that because that's sort of the... I'm not trying to fool people. I am trying to make a very clickable image, one that people want to click on. And since the main action here is going on in Europe, I decided to use those thumbnails instead of something very Japanese, because we can click back over here. It's just we're all... Oh, I did move, and I do want to get on board the boat. Get on board the boat, and now let's look at revolt risk currently. I've got one coming there, so and here we're going to be turning this over very soon, so let's just move it down here. We have a huge big stack. Okay, you've got to rebase, I guess. But huge big stack of units there. But I'm hoping the infrastructure here will support supplying them. Surprised that the naval base isn't bigger, but whatever. Now, we were waiting for this to be completed. Okay, fighter ground crew training has advanced. Very good. Air interception tactics, that would be good. We use a lot of that. And wing aerodynamics, that is, yes. Push too far forward. We're coming down here now and catching back up on these. I've let these lag, and I knew I let them lag. Very much because we were going to need them so much. We were already defeating the Chinese, and I wanted to get ready for the Pacific War. But we can very much see the AI's wide front strategy that it always takes. Here, even though we can look. Ah, cool. American blueprints stolen your... should be Imperial Majesty, I believe. Our spies have... unless they're thinking... Nah, I don't know what they're thinking. Our spies have stolen plans... Oh, and this is a paradox thing, not a Black Ice thing, I believe. Our spies have stolen plans that let us improve our abilities with rocket ammunition to level 1. Well, as we can see, that is something that I have very little interest in. Surprised the Americans are doing rocket ammunition so early, but okay. But as we can sort of see here, yeah, there's some victory points down here. 2, but giving up 30. I mean, not they're giving up, but not focusing on that. And, you know, 2. Just so much more is up in here. And yes, to some degree, our vision of what to do is colored by history, because, you know, they race to the shore and whatnot. But really, Paris is the target of the events. I wonder if Germany's going to declare war against Luxembourg ever. Okay, the first of the year. Global game balancing effect. This is again to offset. We've lost these effects, we've gained these effects, which were to offset how, particularly in my opinion, these things grow over time. And some other things. Okay, we can see here they're starting to lose now a little bit up here because they declared war. Or joined the Allies and declared war, and is Finland, who is at war with Germany but hasn't lost any territory yet. Now, as I'm not going to out the person he wrote, you know, is France going to is Soviet Union going to declare war on Finland? Did I check the historical focuses? Well, this doesn't have historical focuses. That is sort of, and I do that too, mix up the Hearts of Iron 4 and Hearts of Iron 3. It's going to do whatever the, and I could look it up, but I'm not going to, at least not at this moment. The Black Ice decisions are these things. If it has a check, and it very well might, for the decision for the Soviets to do the Winter War, I think it does. If it's in a faction or not, or whatnot. Because I say I think it does because if it was in, if it got into the, you know, the Axis faction, I don't think the Winter War event would fire. Okay, sonar detection equipment has advanced. Very good. And it's grayed out, fine. And large warship radar has advanced, which improves things. Is that, no, that's this one. Okay. Well, we are now in 1940, so let's do that. Let's limit our both our, do our anti-air and limit our damage. And we need to do a few of these. Okay. Okay, yeah. Annual espionage focus. Espionage bonus, industrial, production efficiency, political. That naval intel one might be good in 1942 or something. I don't really care about industrial intel unless that just allows us to steal more stuff. We'll do extra spies. And we will do the quick boost short term because we are not doing a giant infrastructure project this year. I don't think we're going to do any more. Let me just make sure. Right. Yeah, we decided not to do that. So yeah, we'll do short term. And we're going to wait a day. So I'm not yet worried about Soviet Union declaring war on Finland and then getting into a war with the Allies. Medium warship radar has advanced. Okay, good. And we'll do cruiser anti-aircraft. Now that it's been a day for our short-term boost to come into effect. Annual national focus. Let's see, build up the IGN. A big fleet means victory. Manpower modifiers. Build up a big army. We must defeat China or perish. Well, we've already defeated China, so we're not going to do that. But the manpower is nice, but we are doing okay. I'm looking at there. Economy. High seas 15%. That would be nice. See, efficiency, supplies down, air, land, build, naval, build, speed down. Oh, that's 8%, which is pretty big. I think we're going to do the IJN. That seems the natural one. We will still get a manpower bonus. And reduce speed and land, air, and armor. Don't know that I quite agree with the air as much as because the Japanese Navy more and more was embracing naval air capabilities. So we'll go with this one. And this is nice. The build speed, but it's non-permanent, where this is permanent. It does cost us a lot, but we'll get it does say lose, but we will actually get 3 shipyards, which will help us. So yeah, we'll take this. I haven't quite done the math on all of that, but yes. Okay, large caliber machine cannons. Very good. And we'll do the machine gun cannon combo, which the Japanese did do, at least on the 0. No, not from Haiti right now. Okay. Does sort of show me that this hasn't been taken because they are defending it, so the AI has done that bit of the job effectively. Argentina, rare materials. Okay, that's good. USA, metal. Okay. Sort of wish it was a non-USA. Of course, I could probably get metal from somewhere else. No, not from Liberia. Okay, that's what I was waiting for. Anti-air Ammunition has advanced. Okay. And I thought that kicked in. Maybe it was. Well, we can do drop tanks and things like that now. Oh, specialized here. This is these. Okay. No, those are too early. Or it's too early now for those. Well, yeah, let's go for drop tanks now that we're in 40. And we will now, I just had problems with this going in and selecting this before this effect happened. But this little effect will come off now. And yeah, I keep going for the balanced approach. I could definitely see the mass approach for somebody like maybe the Soviet Union. Definitely I could see it for nationalist China, just to get lots of units out there. And now we've lost those effects, so yeah, just to get mass numbers. If I was China and I thought I had enough ICs, I'd have to play it to know. I would want a few good divisions. Okay. I would want a few good divisions, at least, to build up and fight. But masses do matter. I'd want to guard all of the port provinces to keep Japan from invading those, and have a certain amount of depth along whatever fronts we have, so that even if they punch through the first divisions, you got more in the back there. Okay, so they've pushed all the way down to the Mediterranean. No, thank you. Cyan, money for metal. Absolutely. We both want to get you liking us. Still not sure whether I'm annexing or if there's, an event comes up, or keeping you as a Axis ally or something. I don't know. Okay, rare materials. Let's get it from, it's going to be a small amount, but that's sort of kind of good for Italy. They want to give it up, fine. Gun ability, twin engine airplanes, very good. That's way back on 37. Okay, we'll let that continue. Well, at least Germany is pushing into the Netherlands as well. But again, it's things like the AI can't figure out that they should defend here. I don't know whether they really had defenses or simply just the terrain would naturally constitute a bit more artificial defense there. And then defend, along this river line here, and just, when you're facing against Nazi Germany, we're not looking like, oh yeah, we got a border with Belgium, we got a border with Denmark, and we got a border with Ireland, or whatever, nations of those size and caliber. Yeah, okay, if we happen to go to war with one of them over a soccer game, and yes, there was a war over a soccer game, if you don't know that. It was between El Salvador and and Honduras, and I forget who won and who lost. I think maybe Honduras won the game and El Salvador was upset, so El Salvador invaded Honduras. Now, this wasn't just some 35 guys went across the border and it was technically a war. No, they actually sent military forces into Honduras. It was one of the few times American aircraft, World War II aircraft, or sort of World War II aircraft, fought each other, in which an El Salvadorian, just saw a little bit of this a while ago. An El Salvadorian pilot flying a P-38 Lightning, the ones with the sort of twin tail booms, the twin engine, tail booms. I think he shot down 3 aircraft, and at least one of them, if not all 3 of them, were P-51 Mustangs, and he said his turning radius was much better and a better aircraft. I don't know whether that just reflects better pilots in El Salvador than in Honduras. But oh yeah, no, they shot down aircraft, and fighter aircraft were fighting each other. It was a real war. Now it lasts like 10 days or so, or something like that. It wasn't a very long war, but it was a real war, and people were dying in it over a soccer game. But so let's just say that, small countries fighting over a soccer game, yeah, you very well might want to defend your borders, and you want to keep people's homes, houses, and lives safe. And yeah, I'm with you on all that. But when you're facing off a nation that's as aggressive as Nazi Germany, and of course you've seen them be aggressive against Austria, in which that was a military invasion to forestall a plebiscite that Hitler was afraid he would either lose, or if win by not very big of a amount. Now, of course, once he was in power, they win it by like 80% or 90% or something. And no, I don't think those are falsified results. I think those are skewed results, meaning, say, the Jewish population of Austria wasn't necessarily allowed to vote, and people that were going to, have non-Nazi views, because there was, basically in Germany, there was no fascist party. Basically, there was a nationalist party, the I guess DP or the Deutsches Party or whatever it was, that party of Hindenburg and von Papen and whatever. I'm probably messing up the name of that party. That was sort of the nationalist party, a conservative right-wing party that would more or less like to get, because you got to remember, there was very much democracy under the Kaiser. This wasn't trying to go back to a dictatorship or trying to go back to some other sort of autocratic extremist rule. Under the Kaiser, there was a constitution, and there was democratically elected people to the German parliament. I forget what it was called. Sorry. But, now, generally with a Kaiser, an emperor of some sort, it is a center of right government. You can have a left-wing, aristocratic, hereditary aristocratic rulership. You can. You very much can. I know of some hereditary type elitists around the world that have had extremist left-wing views, and that they very well maybe not want to give up their ancient titles, but the titles are meaningless in a political sense, meaning you don't get any, you're not going to House of Lords because you're the Duke of so-and-so. You're just the Duke of so-and-so. That's just sort of a special antiquated title for you over the guy who, cleans the streets. You're both people, you both equally get a vote. Just one is sort of a historical curiosity of a title, shall we say. I definitely know of people that held those views, and very much around this time, including around Spain and the Spanish Civil War. So you can have that kind of viewpoint. And definitely under the Kaiser's Germany, you weren't going to be able to have the anarchist party that wants to overthrow the monarchy get seats in parliament. So it's not anybody, anything goes. But it's still has a democratic mechanism within the government, and it's still a constitutional government. So that's the government that Hindenburg, that von Papen really sort of wants back. They want the Kaiser back, how much they want to change from the old Kaiser's constitution to what is in the Weimar Constitution. Obviously, they want to change it so the Kaiser's back. Where do they want to put the needle, shall we say, between how much power the Kaiser has versus how much power does Parliament have? And then, of course, whether if you have a Kaiser, you're not going to have a president, but you would still have a chancellor or whatnot. No, I wasn't looking for the Reich Chancellor term, but so you still have a chancellor who is somehow, whether directly elected, which is normally what a president is, but so a chancellor would normally be elected from members of the parliament. So you would, just how much power would that have versus, okay, but they were generally wanting to have conservative principles, most assuredly, but that's what they wanted to have. So there was no real party that, because I'm just imagining and I just don't know. I'm sure there was maybe a fascist German party somewhere on some voting thing, but there basically was no fascist party in Germany, at least not by the 1930s. Before, when you're looking, and much before, 1922 is when fascism sort of grows up in Italy when it gets into power. And so early 20s is you're starting, you're not getting any fascism before World War I, because fascism as an ideology did not exist before World War I. So you don't have that. But in Austria, which is not Germany, because I wasn't talking about German peoples or whatever, I was talking about the country Germany. In Austria, there are two main far right, well, no. How do I put this? And I did have a big talk and my computer crashed, but I won't go into it. It's often called the far right, but fascism is a left-wing ideology. Okay? Fascism is a left-wing ideology. Why is it left-wing and a left-wing ideology? Because it is a collectivist viewpoint. They're collectivists. So are socialists, so are communists. They're collectivists. Fascists are collectivists, and fascists are also social justice types, okay? We often call them far right, and I was just sort of using it because I will slip into it, but fascism, compared to what wanting the Kaiser or wanting the Kaiser, oh yeah, I know I said the same thing, wanting the Kaiser in Germany or the Kaiser in Austria back, and wanting aristocratic rule, fascism is anti that, wanting them in power. So fascism comes out of socialism. If far right, well, the reason the socialists and the communists call fascists far right, and I do slip into that language because it's what is often used, is because fascism, generally speaking, supports religion. Now, there's a lot of conflict between the organization of the church in Italy and the fascists. Now, there is eventually settlements, which I don't think Mussolini was ever happy with, in that early primary education was going to be the responsibility of the church and not the state. Mussolini did not like that. And you have to remember, before unification of Italy, whatever the sort of right in here, was the Papal States. Now, how big is the Papal States under Mussolini? Is it the Vatican, the Vatican, or is it the Vatican plus the Palace of Fraschetti, which is a Fraschetti is a bishop, I believe, bishop in the Catholic Church, the Fraschetti, bishopric, no, cardinal. Sorry, cardinal. It's a cardinal's palace. It was built as a cardinal's palace. It was in the sort of, it's in this general area. Well, maybe if you go out a little bit, I don't know exactly where Fraschetti is, but it's in this sort of in the mountains, more up in here. Is that, in a sort of immediate building, is that part of papal territory? Is buildings, including the churches outside of Rome, is that papal territory? Where is papal territory versus Italian territory, because Italy believe, or fascists believe, that which is of the political sphere is corporately owned and held. So, and I'm not going to go very deep in it. I'm restraining myself from doing it. So, if the church owns a bunch of land that's, say, farmland or any sort of land, just a big tract of land, fine, they can own it, but they're going to be treated as if they're any other land owner. There's going to be taxes and other things paid on that land. But basically, and I'm sort of truncating this, and I don't know in a lot of detail, but sure, the physical church building is church property. Oh, but the police get to enter it at any moment they want to, looking for a criminal. You don't get the idea of giving sanctuary to somebody. At least, I don't know if I'm getting any of this wrong. You can correct me below. So that which is sort of the state or the civil society is going to be Italian controlled, but matters of religion, shall we say, fascism, whether in Italy or in other countries, the fascist parties, generally speaking, allow that entirely to be up to the church, the matters of religion. They weren't stepping on matters of religion. So they strongly supported religion in that sense. That is thought on the communists particularly, but also the socialists. And yeah, you'll find some devout communist who is, someone who strongly believes in communism but is also religious, or you'll find some devout socialist who's also a devout Christian. It will happen, but Christianity and socialism really are incompatible, in that you can talk about how Jesus, all you want, how Jesus wants to help the poor. Absolutely. He was very much wanting to help the poor. But if you look at Jesus's teachings, they are all that it should be voluntary. Meaning, out of your Christianity, you should give to the poor. So if you want to have a program that helps the poor, it can be government run, but it must function on pure donations. Pure donations. So you can have everything run from the government, but it must not run on tax money. Tax money, and you may remember Jesus was not terribly happy with some tax collectors. So tax money should not be used to help the poor under Christian, at least the Christianity that was taught by Jesus, should not be used to help the poor. Tax money should not be used to help the poor. Donations, voluntary donations, should be used to help by the poor. And whether that is administered on an individual basis, somebody has the money in their pocket and they want to give it to somebody that they feel is in need on the street, that can be done that way. It can be done with an organization, large or small, a local community organization or a multinational organization like the Red Cross or the Red Crescent or whatever the flavor of the big Salvation Army or whatever. But those should not be supported on tax money, or can be a government social welfare program, fine, but it should be purely run on donations. That is the Christian philosophy. It isn't just the help of the poor that the socialists and the leftists want to throw back at the conservative Christians' faces, which often those conservative Christians do already tithe, even though if they're giving money into taxes, they're still giving tithes, 10% of their income to the church, often for the functioning of helping the poor. And some of them, of course, may not give 10% to the church. They may give however much percent to the church and then other percents to helping out the poor. But Christianity teaches it's voluntary that it should be. So socialism and Christianity are at that level of tax. Tax is enforcement, is enforced. That is anti-Christian. Not the helping of the poor is anti-Christian. It is the forcible taking of property is anti-Christian. Christ never expressed leveling, especially from government, leveling theories of behavior. Leveling, as in taking from people who have more than other people to give it to other people or other sorts of leveling philosophy. He never taught that. Okay, so socialists, some socialists, now not all socialists are hardliners. A bunch of people that vote socialist really just want to vote for national health care programs, which is a leveling program, obviously, and other sorts of things, but truly do sort of believe in a general capitalistic society, you know, the voters, you know, and so they like what some of the socialists say and whatnot. I'm talking about the ideological people here. Okay, so they will see, most of them will see those that have strong religious beliefs as being conservative or right-wing. And in that sense, fascism is. Not in its economic sense, and not in its authoritarianism, because again, we just talked about socialism, in that it takes money from the populace. Taking money from the populace, the more you take, the more authoritarian you are. It may be an authoritarianism of the majority, but it is still an authoritarianism. Instead of an authoritarianism of the one, it may be the authority of the majority. Socialism is still authoritarianism, okay? And it still may function within a democratic system, but by its very nature, socialism and communism are authoritarian, whether they are run by one under Stalin, as it, and more and more so as it goes on, maybe under Lenin a bit more of a Politburo, meaning a small junta type of stuff, or whether it's communist, syndicalist, socialist, or whatever, that may have truly a mass of elected deputies, and they truly argue it out in your parliament, and then, you know, and there may be, you know, 3 monarchist deputies in your parliament, and there may be 30 laissez-faire market political people in your parliament, but all the rest are communists, and maybe so the communists arguing with the communists, and it may all be democratic, but it is still authoritarian in that once they make up their mind, it is the authority of the masses over the population. So it is still authoritarianism. So the authoritarianism of Mussolini is not a right-wing thing, because you have to look at Mao, Stalin, Pol Pot, just to see the lie, or Tito, or even Lenin, or whoever, Castro. Cuba was nothing but Castro's dictatorship for so many years, and still the current Castro, his brother, who's still running Cuba, it is still a dictatorship. So those are dictatorships of the left. Okay, the other thing that on the socialist and the communist, those are inherently internationalists' viewpoints. National Socialism, and I use that term normally, I'm referring normally to Hitler's viewpoint. But you could theoretically, and I don't know if there has been other people who really want to implement a socialist program, but for some reason is nationalist. But that is sort of what Mussolini does. He changes the program, the socialist program, to still a corporatist program, because Mussolini, and I know I'm going in this further than I intended, Mussolini very much believes in the mission of socialism when it comes to economic things. But he sees the idea that non-experts running everything around, or running a business for the benefit of the employee, may not be running it for the best for the society as a whole. See, he sees this. And he also sees that people work harder and do better when they get to keep benefits from working harder and doing better. Whether that benefit is a mega corporation, or a small business, a small farm, or just simply working harder in a job and getting pay raises faster than somebody else, or paying somebody on a commission or something. Mussolini sees this idea of people will do better for the collective good still, because under fascism he won't allow a big business or a small business or somebody else to like price gouge in an emergency, or like, oh, we're the only ones that make tires in Italy. So you must buy tires from my company so I can charge whatever I want for tires. Of course, if I charge too much, no one can afford them. No one's going to buy them. But I can maximize my profit. Mussolini is very much against that. But Mussolini understands that whether you're the only tire manufacturer or you're one of 100 tire manufacturers, you need to make a profit. So Mussolini's fascism is that does not allow, as he would see it, or as a socialist would see it, exploitation of the masses or the collective nation. Because when he says the state, he doesn't mean so much the state as in the postman and the bureaucrat. He sees the state as the collective of the masses. So Mussolini's fascism acknowledges and wants to use the leadership as well as ownership of the large corporations, or whether they are, a single person owning the corporation or a mass of people owning shares of stock for the corporation. Maybe a huge corporation, no one owns more than 10 shares, so it's spread throughout Italy, and there's still like a president and a board of directors and all of that kind of stuff. But he doesn't want to, even if they could, sort of monitor, well, okay, what's your profit margin on tires? Your profit margin is 200%? Oh, that's no good. No. Either raise your workers' salaries or lower the cost of tires, or both. He wants to make it, I don't know right offhand if he has a specific formula. Sorry, I don't know if he does. But, a reasonable profit for your corporate business. That is what Mussolini's fascism sees. He still wants to address and support the same corporatist, and I mean corporatist as in the nation as a whole, viewpoints that a socialist wants to do, but he sees a more workable system. And in that, the economic system of fascism is more workable than the economic system of socialism or communism. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm not talking about its brutality. I'm not talking, which is brutality for even more so in communism, gulags and mass death. Yeah, there was most of the quote-unquote political prisoners in Mussolini's system were from this part of Italy, and they were the mob, the mafia, in which the U.S. frees and puts back in charge to run southern Italy as they're trying to take it over. And although there were leftists that weren't mob types that were put in that system too, but that is much, much lower in numbers and in scale. And I mean, in numbers as in sheer numbers of people, but as in scale as in a percentage of the people. It is infinitesimal, fractional element compared to what was going on in the Soviet Union. So he still has a left-wing corporatist view of society. Mussolini does. That he shares with the socialists, because Mussolini's parents were socialist. He embraces socialism. He runs one of the major socialist journals, newspapers, something I forget, in Italy. And it is only his experience in World War I and looking around, he starts to question socialism. So he moves from their internationalist viewpoint to a hyper-nationalist viewpoint. And he moves to a sort of left-wing, a workable left-wing. Fascism is trying to make leftism work. It is in an economic sense. So what, if a hyper-nationalistic government and a government that allows and maybe sponsors heavy involvement of the church in society, including official roles, as in not just allowing churches to have, what might be after school or even full-time religious schools, you're having the church run the school system and other things like that. If that is a conservative, or not a conservative, if that is a right-wing viewpoint, then fascism is right-wing. But its economic system is, by its nature, leftist. And that is why the heavy conflict with both communism and socialism in places like France, in, Spain maybe not so much, but in Britain, where you have the British Union of Fascists battling it out on the streets with the socialists, is because they're both fighting over the same group of people, generally speaking, and that is sort of the workers. They're trying to get the workers to support them. In Britain very much, and in other places too, but in Britain very much, no one is fighting with the fascists for the middle class. The middle class people that have a fascist type viewpoint or have that sort of collectivist viewpoint migrate very quickly to the BUF, the buff. Very quickly to it. Now that doesn't, I'm not saying most of the middle class in Britain reject the socialist, reject the fascist, reject all of that. Most of them are rejecting it. But those that are going that way, you know, the middle class that is going to one of the more extreme viewpoints is going to fascist. Now you can have oh well, stay away from that for right now. But so is fascism right wing? In certain aspects, yes. In certain aspects, no. I sort of kind of grant you it's sort of the middle theory. Now, okay, back to what we were talking about, the Netherlands, which we were talking about Austria. Austria has been governed mostly since the end of, well, I think, well, since the 30s. I don't know. Since the 30s, it's been governed by a fascist political party, the Fatherland Front. And its main rival for that same space is the National Socialists. And so, as you can see, that is the two main parties. And Hitler doesn't want to see the Fatherland Front succeed, so he does his military invasion of Austria that is unopposed. Then, of course, he's aggressive against Czechoslovakia, gets the Sudetenland, and that's through military force and threat. Okay, so that should be telling some country like the Netherlands, this big growing Nazi Germany military power is a potential threat. And I'm sure the military understands this. And I think the actual real military did understand this and try to, I don't know how good they did. They didn't do nearly the fortress work and wasn't nearly enough here. You know, they did do the Eben Amal, you know, and there were several other high-tech sort of fortifications for the time there in Belgium. I don't think the Dutch really did anything like that. They did have plans, and they did flood some of their country, since they build their country underwater or below sea level, so they can easily turn it to underwater country. So that they're doing this, but so the AI, and that's I know where I got, doesn't understand that, oh yeah, you leave this entirely undefended. It has, well, maybe a couple of ICs. I don't know how many ICs there are, but there's a few there, but no real resources. So you leave it undefended, and you defend, you know, maybe here because there's a swamp, or here if you got a river defense, and you sort of create your defense there. Maybe you defend down into here to help out your buddies, or maybe you just simply try to hold some sort of line like this. The AI just cannot think of this. And when I've talked to, and again, this is all very public talking, when I've talked to the AI developers about doing this, they're like, oh, we're trying to make it think better than that. That's too, I don't know what their term was, but that's too formulaic or something like that. It's just a we're trying to make them more dynamic. I think they say it. Well, okay, great, but they've yet to demonstrate that they can do so. So a formulaic defense would be better than a stupid dynamic defense. If you, yeah, okay, I know we've talked long about that, but which got me into this other stuff. Okay, medium armored designs have advanced. We're not going to do assault guns. We're not going to do heavy armor, armored cars. We're in 40. Which we need to unlock this. We've got that. We need one more level of that, and this needs at least 4. So we need to do this. So we'll do that. We're trying to unlock extra wide tracks to unlock better infantry support tanks, because we've got lots and lots of those. there was at least one, maybe two, but at least one fascist party in Japan during this time period that like got like one or two seats in one election in parliament. You know, it's pathetically little. And so if you look at Japan and its setup, it is not fascistic, very much not fascistic. It is hyper nationalistic. It is hyper militaristic. Oh, and that is also something that socialists, and maybe outside of the Soviet Union and in a lot of the different parties, at least maybe claim, oh, Paris has fallen. Well, that's a good point to stop this episode here. But definitely socialists, and particularly at this time, were very anti-militarism. And if you talk about militarism as in we're militaristic and we want to, you know, base our state on militarism and conquering other states, yeah, that's sort of the way they spell it out. But if militaristic is simply you want a very strong army and a very strong military traditions in your nation, that's a good thing, in my opinion. Not necessarily aggressive militarism, as in like Japan, you know, aggressive against China, using its military to bully or take over nations, again, like Japan doing in China. Yeah, so if you're not talking about that militarism, but simply like Prussian militarism, or even there's French militarism, because you can look back at the French Royal Army, or you look at the French Imperial Army of Napoleon. You know, there's French militarism. It may be used like Napoleon and the royal armies as aggressive elements, but it could just be very strong militaristic traditions within your society. The socialists and the communists are generally against these types of traditions. You generally see in the Soviet Union as well as in Maoist China, the commissars cutting back militarism by often killing off large numbers of their officer corps. So, and trying to make the armies out to people's armies, and that the great vast majority of the army is conscripted into the army for a limited amount of time and then goes back to its service, as opposed to having long-serving professionals in the army that are more responsive to the state than to the people. And the reason they want that is so that if you have a mass uprising of the people, they fear the military coming in and putting it down. But if all the military is just people doing 2 years of service, as opposed to a separate class of people, if you will, that often generationally stay in the military, they believe, the left believes, that it's less likely to have the military put down an uprising of the people. Which, of course, is strange in the U.S., because in the U.S., the uprising of the people would be a conservative uprising, because they're the ones who have the guns. And it's the state who is the left-wing people. Yeah, sort of strange. But, no, but maybe that's why they're trying to oppose militarism in America, because, no, because if the military is purely a 1 or 2 year enforced service element, and if you have a national uprising of the conservatives, they wouldn't respond well. Yeah, the left in America is stupid. They mix European leftism and American leftism, and it doesn't work. So fascism is militaristic in that sense, and so that is why. So left and right really gets confused when you're talking about fascism, because you can look on organic theories of government. Don't want to get deep into that right now, and see not nearly as heavily corporatist, but somewhat corporatist viewpoints, but are also generally hierarchical in traditionalist forms of government. Monarchies with aristocracies, with church special privileges, and that kind of thing, that at different times, at different levels, wants to look out for the the masses of the people, but generally they don't trust the masses of the people either. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and if you're wondering, as I've been looking and thinking and seeing about it, National Socialism of Hitler very much looks more towards mercantilist economic systems than fascist economic systems. Mercantilism, I would describe that mostly of what Hitler and the Nazis are doing, not fascist economic systems. And those are very different things. Very different things. Okay, well, on that note, we'll end the episode here. I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. If you haven't already but made it this far, please subscribe to the channel. And, of course, you can post corrections. If I'm getting any of these details wrong, please post below. I'm sure I'm getting some details wrong to some extent. So if you got a good correction, please post it below. Comments, questions, other things. I am thinking about making a long diatribe. I don't know. And it's really hard to talk just about fascism without talking about socialism, or talking about National Socialism without talking about fascism. So it's sort of got to all be sort of mixed, because they don't exist in a vacuum. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.